Cup of tea. Oh.
Ade, why don't you tell me a bit about this marvellous beast that you've just brought in?
Well, this one is actually, it looks nothing like it because it's on a normal 80-30 sized chassis, prototype chassis. But this is the prototype of the Dual Terror. Because I didn't have the transformers for the Dual Terror at the time because it didn't exist, because this was the prototype for it. I used an 80-30 mains, I used a choke out of a Thunderverb, and I used a Thunderverb 50 output, which is 4K and it goes good with the 4EL84s, and a tube rectifier, and 4EL84s in cathode bias, and then you got the Dual Terror. You got a Tiny Terror channel here, which is just volume, tone and gain. Then you've got what's called, I think it went out as the fat channel for production. It's just called the warmer channel on this. But actually this is my favourite prototype. I want this, but my CEO won't let me have it.
Well, before you fire it up and play us a few things through it, you said it's got a choke and a valve rectifier. Those aren't on the production model, are they? What's going to be the difference there?
They didn't end up on the production model because we didn't know whether this amp was going to be like a full head. Because we were already selling the Tiny Terror at the time. We'd sold thousands of them and they were a really good seller. And people really liked what this channel did. So I wanted to do an amp with this channel with more power. So it could have ended up as a full orange size head, but we ended up doing a slightly bigger lunchbox type thing in the end.
Oh, so it's literally a question of will they actually fit in the box? And I guess they didn't.
And the answer was no. So, the prototype had them because of the chassis. I had a few of these chassis knocked up by the factory, like semi-blanks, and then I just design amps into them.
Okay, so again, it's just what you had kicking around.
It really is that. It's point to point, there's just tag strip, which is what all these screws are, and then the components are soldered individually and sleeved.
And other than the obvious size difference, like what is the sound difference you'd expect from using a choke and a valve rectifier compared to the production model?
The choke will give you more perceived clean headroom on an EL84 amp.
Okay.
It's not making any more power, but it does something to because it resists changes in current. It gives you more perceived clean headroom, and obviously with the tube rectifier, you've got the power supply compression built right in with that. So that also...
That's what they call sag, right?
Yeah, well, it's actually compression, really. But people call it... They got loads of names for it, but sag is probably the most common one. A bit of me, the kid in me was going, what's the Tiny Terror front end going to sound like with a tube rectifier and a choke? Because I already had the Tiny Terror.
Out of your own curiosity?
Yeah. So I sometimes satisfy my own curiosity on prototypes. Yeah, it's the sum of its parts, but you've got to try and get the production model to sound as good. And that's a challenge. But if you didn't build the prototype as good as it could sound, then how good are you going to know the production model is?
So that's when it gets to the factory, that's when you have to be fussy about what parts actually go out to the public, right?
Yeah, totally, yeah. Because you've got something that is going to be very hard to replicate sonically because you've built it how you want it, But you've got to somehow get it as close as possible, and it gives you the gold standard to try and nudge towards for the production, so you get a better sounding production amp at the end by doing that.
Well, yeah, if you built something like this, you kind of want the public to have something that you'd be proud of as well, right?
Yeah, it's kind of got a really classic sort of sound. I mean, I've got this on the Tiny Terror channel. I've got the gain, I've got the volume all the way up. I've got the gain on 5, and I've got the tone just above, about 2 o'clock there. And it kind of, this has got pearly gates and a Ceph-Lover, like a PAF. Both of these are traditional sort of output. And it kind of sounds wide open. It kind of sounds like, cleans up really nice on the volume, and gets a nice bark out of it. And there's loads more gain available because you've got the other half of that pot. But that's how I like to run them.
It's quite defined, even though it's an aggressive sound, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's got loads of tone, maybe I should do something like this in the future as an amp, but who knows?
I've got one. It sounds great.
Cool.
Very sort of 60s. It's got that jangly thing about it I quite like.
Yeah, there's very few amps that nail that properly nowadays, I find. Unless they're old amps,
I'd say that's getting pretty close though.
Yeah, well, it's built the way they used to be built, so, it's, again, you get that definition with the solid core stuff, component, everything wired by its component legs. It's different to multi-core wire.
But I suppose if you're doing a printed circuit board with sort of proper big thick tracks on it, you're getting close to that sound again, aren't you?
Again, you've got to make them taller as well, which is why I use 2 ounce copper, for production, which is does change the sound in a good way, gives it more muscle.
Well, I suppose that's the point of using this approach, because then when you do the production PCB, if you've kind of met the mark.
Yeah. So you end up with a better sounding production amp.
Well, from quite a classic vintage 60s sounding thing to something utterly more ridiculous, I couldn't really resist. I understand this is the prototype for the Thunderverb 200, isn't it? Even though it says Super Rockaverb on it. What's the story here?
Oh, that was just the code name really for the design, Super Rockaverb 200. People were, asking. We just decided to discontinue the 8140 TC, and people started suddenly asking for them. Every time you discontinue something, people suddenly ask for it, because humans want what they can't have. That's the nature of the beast. So, and then I thought, well, let's try something different that's got lots of power. So that was the answer, like 2 3-stage channels, one with a shape control and one with the 3-band, and then a global reverb.
So they're the same gain but just sort of 2 different voices,
3
right?
stages each, and they both clean up as well, so you can get clean sounds on both channels.
Right, so
the
whichever
shape gives you all mid-range one way and all bass and treble the other way, and no mid-range, and then anything in between, just with one knob. So that was the first amp with the shape control that we did.
Cool. And 200 watts reverb. I've also swapped a thoroughly more ridiculous guitar. I kind of thought I'd go with that because when you've got 200 watts of amp that'll do higher gain, one of the best things to do with it is to just push out some low notes.
Some trouser leg flapping material there,
Yeah. I mean, you need a lot of power to do that. And I guess this is...
Well, you need power to do 2 things. You need power for the loud, clean thing. That's where you need power. If you're playing overdriven, I've found that you very rarely need more than 30 watts.
Yeah, and that's a loud amp.
Yeah, but if you're playing either like more scooped type of modern type of overdrive or clean, that's when you need the power.
I think people who have got guitars with extra strings or tuned low and stuff, that's when you need a bit more bit more shove behind it as well, right?
Yeah, you need power, and you also need a transformer that can make that power at 30 cycles. If you're doing an amp like that, you know, which a lot of guitar amp output transformers can't make the power of the amp anywhere in the frequency range, let alone below 100.
That's why this thing's huge, right?
It's not that huge. It's actually bigger in the production one. I actually made the transformers bigger for production than they are on a prototype.
I like your thinking there. But it's got to be heavy to sound heavy, right?
Yeah, there's no substitute for, you know, the core of the transformer is what governs how much bottom end you can get through it and output, you know.
You're doing that for 2 hours a night as well, right?
Yeah, you know, so it's got to hold up, you know, it's going to get, you know, stuff will get warm. You got to make sure the mains transformer can run for, you know, 2 hours flat out without overheating. Most amps, that's not the case, you know, because they don't waste any iron in the transformer. But I always, you know, make sure they're making full power for all day, and it gets hot, the mains transformer.
But not too hot.
Well, that's it. You know, it's got to still work.
Well, it's buy cheap, buy twice, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. You know, if you make transformers too small, yeah, the amp will work. But if you have to put a really long show on it, where you've got 10 bands playing through it, it's not going to be working at the end of the night. That's fact, because the transformer will be molten.
Quite right. Well, you were talking about loud and clean. Got reverb on here as well, which I quite like on a high gain 200 watt amp. You don't see that too often, but let's make a bit of noise. You're not getting this on the video, but there's a lot of air moving in this room, and it's great. There's not really a substitute for moving lots of air with lots of valves, really, is there?
No, not really. No, it's quite a pleasant thing.
Right, let's have a go on this. The B
channel.
I was going to say the dirty channel. They're both dirty or they're both clean, but
yeah,
the one with the
shape
well, it says
control.
slope here, but it became the shape control, right?
That's right. Yeah, it was originally called slope, but I think it was used. The name was used on some old hi-fi amps, valve hi-fi amps. So it was only a code name, and it got renamed to shape.
Well, whatever it's called, it sounds pretty good. I'm gonna make some distortion.
Nice.
That's pretty unstoppable sounding.
Yeah, I could see my trouser legs moving.
They were
Doing
moving.
that. Yeah, they were moving along in time. They were dancing with the music.
Excellent. That's what we were hoping for, isn't it?
That's it. Yeah.
I mean, you said it already. The Dual Terror, that's your favourite, and I can really tell why. I thought I was going to be able to make my mind up, and I expected to pick the TH30 at the end of this, but you're starting to sway me with this thing that what the valve rectifier in there's doing is kind of a special thing, and I fully agree that you need to make something like that so I can buy one. But then There's just something about moving a lot of speakers with a lot of valves and a lot of watts and a lot of strings and a lot of noise that... Can I take both?
Well, that's it, yeah. There's your clean channel, there's your mid, there's your crunch, and then there's your dirty. There you go.
Sounds good to me. I'm sure all you viewers watching this have got a favourite as well, so comment below and tell us what you liked, and maybe we can be persuaded to drag a few more of them out and fire those up too. Join us again. Thanks for watching.